So the team wanted to continue working on first-person shooters, and in this window of time, they were debating, hey, yeah, we'd like to do Tomorrow Never Dies, you know, the movie after GoldenEye. I was like, that'd be cool. Some of the features that the team thought that they wanted didn't make sense in the Bond universe. Primarily, they wanted the secondary functions for all the weapons. They also wanted to be a female, and they wanted to tell a story that was about aliens. Along comes a third party and gets into negotiation bid war. We got outbid, dramatically outbid. So we're just like, fine, take it. We're gonna take this, we're gonna make the game they really wanna make, this thing set around 2020. We're almost there. Where are our flying cars? I saw them in Perfect Dark. Where's my laptop gun? That's what led to doing Perfect Dark.
When we finished GoldenEye and we were thinking about what to do next, there was an idea that we wanted to do a game about aliens and that sort of stuff, but keep it in the first-person realm. So we were known as the Alien Intelligence Team before we became the PD team.
I had sort of had enough of James Bond, which is just like a terrible thing to say. I guess people were just looking to do something slightly different, but in the same vein. People were excited about the chance to create a game and a story and a world based on our own ideas.
I think the decision to make it sci-fi was just a reflection of the team's interests. It certainly wasn't based on any commercial thinking.
It was very strongly influenced by Blade Runner and very strongly influenced by conspiracy theories.
Ghost in the Shell, the comic book, was a massive influence, as was Elektra. And the X-Files, of course, with the whole sort of alien investigation thing. I mean, that's where the grey aliens came from, and, you know, that moved straight into PD.
So I just went through all of the UFO tropes I got and tried to make them work in a kind of conspiracy theory. It's like two races of aliens vying for control of the Earth, but trying to keep it under wraps because both of them had different agendas and both of them were vulnerable. Humanity was this third player, this crux point.
David Doak, he decided that he wanted to use the idea of Joanna Dark.
Joanna Dark, whose French real name was Jeanne d'Arc, so she was a military leader in the 100 Years' War, and she was inspired by religious visions to lead the French army against the English army. So she was an incredibly strong character.
Joanna Dark had to be a different kind of character. She needed to be in control. She needed to know what was going on. So with regards to her costume, it was heavily influenced by Ghost in the Shell to give this kind of armour and freedom of movement. And also, she was one of the first characters, I think, to have a change of clothes. Her black dress with a dragon on it, that was actually influenced by Killer Instinct because one of the images is this dragon. And I took that and wove that into the design of the dress. The whole point was to give her lots of different things to wear so she became an intrinsically fashionable character. You know, it's like, oh, what's she wearing this level?
Nintendo had some ideas that we would get a professional voice actress. They wanted an American actress. And we, I think, were unsure about that.
So I guess for the American market, they like to have American lead characters. Well, I don't know, they always gone about, they like the English accent.
But in the end, all of our plans and all of the auditions and all of the negotiations fell through. So we went to Ev and said, it's going to be you.
We were very proud of the fact that we did everything in-house. So I think it was an automatic assumption that as part of the music department, you would get involved in other people's games. And it's just like, you know, do you fancy having a go? Something I can do for you, old woman.
Return our sapient immediately. You don't know what you're doing.
Yes, I do. I'm leaving.
We found out that my impression of Mrs. Ledbetter from The Good Life seemed to be the one to use for Cassandra, so I did all of her voice acting and various screams and deaths that they used.
You know, I wasn't being hired to do the voice. I was being hired as just a musician as part of a team who worked on audio for the game. You know, nowadays, the dads at my little boys' school, they were in their 20s at the time, and they're going back to YouTube now to actually listen to clips going, is it really her, you know? And for them, it's an amazing thing, you know, we're not worthy, and for me, it's just like, it's just a job.
The biggest challenge Perfect Dark faced was the split that happened early on in development, where we planned the game out, and then half the team left to form Free Radical.
So around the time that people were leaving Rare, and that was difficult. And that seemed to go on for quite a while as well. So you've only got half a team left, and you've got this game to finish, and it's just like a really difficult prospect. So I ended up as the new team leader, I guess, just because I knew most about the game and the engine at that time. It's like the story was created, a lot of the ideas were generated, but then remember most of the work being done after that time, so we had to get more people onto the team.
We had 3 times as many people working on Perfect Dark as we did on GoldenEye.
All those new people coming onto the team just brought so much to the development. Yeah, it was basically almost like a fresh start.
I think the teams were uniquely shielded from the outside world in a way that just doesn't happen everywhere else.
We didn't have a production manager or a schedule or weekly meetings or monthly meetings or, as far as I can remember, any meetings whatsoever. People would just do things they thought were cool and would work.
Basically, we were left very much to do what we wanted, and it was great how the management or whatever supported what we wanted to do.
We didn't have the commercial pressures of milestones and deadlines that drive so much of game development these days. We were pretty much left to it and expected to make the best thing that we could.
We all wanted to make sure that we did a game as good as GoldenEye again. It didn't make us afraid of doing something new.
Looking back at it now, it's a really free environment to make those kind of games and to let people create in a non, production-led environment. It's like, we're going to make a game, we're going to make it good, and it's ready when it's ready.
We got a new motion capture system which allowed us to capture like full walk cycles. That was used throughout Perfect Dark.
We did use Duncan for all of the Joanna Dark sequences, and we gave him a pair of heels, so he walked like a girl.
Yes, I did try wearing high heels. That's not a good memory, and it wasn't a good result either.
We would say, okay, I've got so many gunshots or reactions to do. Now, the thing with a reaction is, it is a reaction. You can't know it's coming. So to make everyone look real, essentially I would spend the afternoon torturing Duncan.
Yes, let's get Duncan in the suit again. Let's go and hit him a few times and push him over.
This, generally speaking, involved me either prodding him with a stick, so if he got shot in the shoulder, I would prod him so he would have to move, or the best one, my particular favourite, so when he got shot or hit by an explosion, he'd have to move backwards, we would actually tie something around his waist, and then maybe give him a countdown so he could get an idea of when he was going to get yanked backwards, and then yank him backwards on the count of 1 instead of the count of 3, just so that he had no idea that he was about to, die horribly and get flung across the room. When it came to PD, we suddenly had more animators. John Mummery came on board. John was amazing at this stuff, and he really started this sort of cutscene culture, and he directed most of the scenes he was doing and just did a brilliant job with that stuff.
On the technical side, what we really wanted to do was just keep going with the same engine and then just add a few improvements around the edges, so to speak, because that would allow the rest of the team to just keep working with the same engine and just hit the ground running.
But then we started to explore face mapping.
And I was using the Game Boy camera to map any player's face onto any character in the game. And that was like really cutting edge stuff at the time, which never ended up in the final game, unfortunately.
We had no degree of control of what people would take pictures of or who they would take pictures of and how they would use them.
It was probably the right decision at the time, unfortunately.
I believe, honestly, GoldenEye, one of the best games ever made. But Perfect Dark was intentional. That team understood why 4-player split screen was awesome. And so a lot of focus was put into, let's really make the definitive first-person shooter for console.
I think the star of the show is probably the multiplayer, though, because that's where people play and come back, much like GoldenEye. They come for the single player and stay for the multiplayer.
Let's have very intentional weapon loadouts with secondary functions, and those were thought of as a matrix. If you have a laptop gun, here's how you beat it. If you have the far sight, here's how you beat it, with different weapons and different loadouts being sort of tactical choices to be made of how you beat a particular player. There were some super innovative game modes in the original Perfect Dark, even more in Perfect Dark Zero. Obviously, the way you could control the bots, it was like, hey, if there's only one person, how do you play multiplayer? Let's put in the simulants.
The AIs have personalities you can set. You can have Venge Sim, I think it is, like who will chase you down if you kill it.
Giving them different personalities or different ways that they act just makes it more interesting for the player.
Also, again, from day one, not only thought about multiplayer for deathmatch, but co-op for the single player.
The frame rate wasn't particularly good in normal single player. It was really just looking for a way to add to the single player experience.
You know, what if you could play co-op, but you were the enemy?
You could jump into the nearest body of an enemy and try and take out your friend who was playing as Joe. You had whatever weapon that guy had, plus a suicide pill. Until we got the suicide pill in there, it was a bit of a damn squib. So yeah, the suicide pill became important because it enabled you to get back into the action.
Asynchronous multiplayer is a cool thing. Literally, you're playing the campaign and I'm going to jump between enemy bodies and try and ruin your day. Nothing like it.
We just kept the engine and the core of it the same and just thought, what else can we add to this? And yeah, we probably got a bit carried away.
As we started the project, we kept adding new features, making it so that you can shoot out light, bigger environments and more textures and that kind of thing. It just became clear that we weren't going to be able to fit that into the 4 megabytes that we had.
We basically just put in too much stuff. By the time we ended up with a game, we were using up all of the extra debug memory on the debug consoles. And we found ourselves then unable to get the game to run in the normal amount of memory.
We weren't able to optimize it and get it to fit back in.
So around about that time, there was a RAM pack for the Nintendo 64, which basically extended the amount of memory that it had.
The RAM pack was more of a necessity than a deliberate decision.
To really play it with all the features, you had to have the expansion RAM. You also needed the RAM really to play co-op. It wouldn't have run with the regular split screen mode. We knew that when you play 4-player split screen in GoldenEye, you're in a 160 by 120 resolution window. It's kind of muddy. So we figured that, hey, with the extra memory, we might be able to go all the way up to 480i.
So it sold 2 million, more than 2 million, I think. So it's possible that releasing only with the RAM pack did affect sales.
But we ended up selling millions of expansion RAMs, so in the end, it's hard to say whether it was a disadvantage or not.
With GoldenEye, it was a bit of a slow burn. So when Perfect Dark came out, there was a bit of a different reaction because all of a sudden it was like, from the people that bought you GoldenEye. And it was a much anticipated game. People were expecting it, and we kind of fulfilled everything that we need to, and thank God, because it was called Perfect.
We ended up selling dramatically more than initial load-in and initial forecasts, so Perfect Dark did great.
People in general were talking in positive terms about both GoldenEye and Perfect Dark long after I thought they would stop.
Good night, Miss Dark.